Welcome to the ATDIP Arms Center, the national headquarters of the Fraternal Order Police. Come on in, I'd love to show you around. Well, the reason why we call this the ATDIP Arms Center is because my predecessors, Jerry ATDIP, and before him, Ralph Arms, were long-term national secretaries of the FOP. So when we decided to move to this permanent location, it was only fitting that we name this center after those two individuals. Why don't you come into the gallery and let me explain to you how we ended up here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a rather interesting story. The story starts back in 2003. We were having a lot of discussions about whether it was efficient for us to continue to follow with our tradition. And our tradition was that wherever the National Secretary lived, the national headquarters would go to that home city. Jerry ATDIP was from Nashville, Tennessee. When he became National Secretary, the office was moved here. Prior to that, it was in Louisville, Kentucky, where Ralph Arms was the National Secretary. Technology changed. You don't necessarily have to be on site. We have a very efficient staff, and really it's the oversight and the structures we have in place really played well for us to have some meaningful discussion of whether it made sense for us to have a good investment rather than having rental property all over the place. We had totaled it up as an organization between here and our office in Washington, D.C. by renting property. We'd spent, in a 10-year period, we spent close to $1 million in rent. That really was not serving us at least any equity for our members. So we had some serious discussions about whether we should start buying real property. A committee was put together in 2003, started having some discussions about, and actually did a selection of cities across the country that made the most sense to have our national headquarters, most economically based on the cost to operate an office and the cost of personnel. So we ended up having this long discussion. The committee went through, and in 2004, had a vote on whether or not we should break that tradition and pick a permanent location. And at that time, the board of directors made the right decision and recognized that as an organization, every time we moved, we were moving and hurting our employees because they weren't moving to where our new office was located, and therefore we were losing all that organizational knowledge. So we made the right decision at that time. The study came back and identified a few cities, and the thing that gave Nashville the edge was it was a great place. It was centrally located in the country. It was next to a Nashville International Airport. It gave us all of the elements we needed. The cost of running a business here is very efficient. And more importantly, our staff was located here already. And had we moved it somewhere else, we would have displaced employees. So we wanted to provide a stability for our employees as well. And that's how Nashville ended up being the location. We came here, we started assessing property, both property that existed and raw property where we could build. And President Canterbury and myself traveled all around Nashville looking at property, and we just could not find the right fit. And each time we would go out, we stayed at a hotel next to here, the Nashville Marriott, and kept looking at this piece of property. It was an ugly piece of property. It had a large hill on it, and it had been on the market for over a year. And at some point we decided, you know what, let's take a hard look at it and make an offer on it. And we made a ridiculous offer. And they took our offer the first bid, and therefore we ended up with a piece of property that was far undervalued. It started off what you see now. So we started designing a building, and this building is designed on two concepts. One of them, you have to recognize where we were before we got here. We were in what we call a strip warehouse. It was a warehouse where you rent space, multiple warehouses all in a place. You have a little bit of an office space and then a large warehouse, because at one time the national headquarters did all of the merchandise before we outsourced it. And it needed a large warehouse to be able to accommodate that. So every time we wanted to have more space on office space, we would actually build a box inside of our warehouse. And the building had no light. It was nothing but halls to get you to the next room. The electrical was never really wired for what we had. It was, the air conditioning never really worked. So one thing we told them when we were designing, when we met the architects, we said, you know what, we absolutely have to have light. When you look at the design of this building, you'll see that there's glass all over the place. That was the architect's attempt to be able to help us go from the extreme of not having any windows to giving us a good natural light. The natural light just fills the entire office. So that's why you see it. The second thing that we did with the office and the way it was designed is everyone works in a team concept here. We cross-train everybody so that everybody knows each other's jobs. One of the things we did when we built our building, we had done a survey to our board asking what they thought should be in a national headquarters. And one thing that was identified was they really felt like a 100-year organization really needs to have a museum. Well, we recognize the cost of building a museum. When you look at the cost of building space, it really didn't make sense for us to have that. But what we did, we asked the architect to find a way to incorporate all of this into a good seating area for us that kind of flowed into our lobby. So here what you have, you walk into the front, you end up with the receptionist. We'd call her our director of first impressions, the first person you will meet here. And then after that, you come into the gallery here where we have on display 100 years of memorabilia and history of the Fraternal Order of Police from our inception in 1915 to today. We have pictures of every president that served during that time. We have covers of some of our first journals. We have key things, the key milestones in the history of our organization. The shovel that broke the ground at the National Memorial in Washington, D.C. We have torch run, Special Olympics torch run torches that we use in the torch run itself, and just a great deal of information. You'll also notice as you walk through the building, a lot of shelves with a lot of knickknacks, a lot of collectibles. Well, members across the country are constantly sending things for us to put on display here at our headquarters. So you'll find memorabilia from really all across this country that have a strong connection. We have some items that are actually part of the World Trade Center. You have items that are just collectibles. We have decanters. We had one individual from Virginia who donated hundreds of decanters, all police figures. And we have them displayed out throughout our entire headquarters here. Here's our Wall of Honor. This is where we recognize the sacrifice and the memory of officers who were killed in the line of duty who also served on our national board. Ben Perry was a national president. He was a 20-year veteran with the Gary, Indiana Police Department, and it is during that time that he served 2 different times as the national president. The first time for just over a year, and after a short break, he served an additional 6 years. Upon retiring, he moved to Adams County, Ohio, where he was eventually elected sheriff. And shortly after being elected sheriff, in 1953, while on a traffic stop, he was shot and killed. Ray Franklin was the national second vice president. He was a 27-year veteran with the Louisville Police Department, and upon retiring, went to work for the state of Kentucky in a law enforcement capacity. While on duty, he was involved in a traffic accident and succumbed to his injuries. Anthony Walker was the national trustee for the state of Maryland. He was a 19-year veteran with the Prince George's County Police Department. While on duty, he was involved in a traffic accident and succumbed to his injuries. Stephen Kenner was the national trustee for the state of North Dakota. He was a 32-year veteran with the Bismarck Police Department. In 2011, he responded to a domestic call and was ambushed and shot and killed upon his arrival. Ken Starrs was a long-serving national trustee for the state of Texas. At the time of his death, he was the Texas state president. Ken was a veteran with the Corpus Christi Police Department and then went on to work for a task force. He was on duty when he was involved in a traffic accident and succumbed to his injuries. This wall leads from our gallery to our conference room, and it serves 2 purposes. First, what we do is we have frames here for every state, and in the state there are 3 people that are the most likely that we deal with. So I wanted everyone in the office to know who they're talking to. I wanted them to be able to visualize who the person. It's all about providing that personalized service. So here's a way for them to know exactly who they are. When they hear a voice, they can identify who they are. But in addition to that, when we have guests that are coming into our conference room, they come into our gallery, they look at 100 years of history, and then we walk them down this hall. They see our Wall of Honor, and then they see the leadership across this country that runs the FOP, and it really says a really strong statement of who we are as an organization. So in addition to all of the historical information we have throughout the building on display, we also have a wide selection of artwork. When we dedicated this building in 2008, state lodges sent us artwork that depicted the personality of their states. So we've hung them throughout the entire building with brass plates identifying the states that made those donations to us. So this is our membership section. This is where we maintain all of the membership database and print out all the membership cards, reconcile all the per capita, and just maintain all of our membership records throughout the country. So when people call the office, this is probably the service they touch the most. Lodge secretaries dealing with almost 1,900 lodges across the country, pushing out roughly about 400,000 membership cards a year. Membership cards are blanks. We have them printed with the artwork. We change the artwork every year. And on the back side is what we're doing is printing the membership numbers. We're printing them in order, and then we ship them out in order to each lodge. So an important function we do here in the National FOP, according to the Constitution and bylaws, the Secretary's office takes in all receipts. We do all billing, we receive all funds on behalf of the organization, and we make all deposits into the bank. That is handed off with accounting to the treasurer, who handles all of the expenditures. An additional function that we do here is very important is the integrity of our good name. We manage all of the license agreements and all of the trademark agreements are handled. We have a number of different trademarks that are under the FOP name, from the FOP name to symbols. All of that is managed here in this office as well. Here in our communications section, I have a number of roles. One of them is the publishing of the journal. We collect all of the materials, put everything together, work with our vendor who does the printing and publishing of the journal for us. We also do all coordinating events with education. So all of the education initiatives we provide throughout the country, all of that is coordinated through this office, all the enrollments and certificates and just all of the planning itself. And then we also do a big role is the expo. It's pulling in vendors, setting them up to help offset the cost of our conference by offering an expo at our national conferences. So in here is labor services. This is some of the labor services employees are stationed here in Nashville, and they do a number of roles in here. Well, the biggest one they do is a kind of a data input. They take contracts throughout the country and they pull information out and make them searchable documents so that when doing negotiations, we're able to do some searches based on cities of comparable populations, comparable budgets, and all of these things. And it allows us to be a little bit better armed when doing negotiations with contracts across the country. Our warehouse, we actually use three things. One, obviously, is storage. But we also maintain a lot of administrative items that we want to keep close to vest. So when they're ordered, we don't go through any vendors. These are things that we will handle out of our office and ship them out to lodges when they need it. In addition to that, one of the big functions of a lodge secretary, and for us nationally, we have more records than an average lodge, is having a records retention policy. And our records retention policy requires us to destroy certain records on certain dates. And so here we have it all situated by the date that it needs to be destroyed. And we just constantly keep rotating through in accordance with our records retention policy. Well, I hope you enjoyed your tour of the national headquarters and know that you're always welcome here. Come visit us anytime. Also, understand that we have a very dedicated staff here, and our mission is to help you succeed. So never hesitate in calling the national headquarters if we can help you with any of your administrative functions.